This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, show 148.
Welcome to We the SEs Podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another podcast episode. Now, in case you don't know me, my name is Ramsey Majaba. I am the host of this podcast, We the Sales Engineers. If you're expecting some other podcasts on this podcast, then you're on the wrong podcast. That's too many podcasts in one sentence. I usually have a co-host by the name of Benny the Beard Kunungo. The beard came after the COVID shutdown. He let himself grow a little bit. But I usually have a co-host, and in most cases, more often than not, we have a guest. Now, due to the fact that my wife just gave birth and my schedule is out of whack, I don't know when to schedule anybody because at any second I might be on daddy duty, baby duty, or just cooking duty or something. So for the next few weeks, I would say 2-3 weeks, it's just going to be me and you and this trusty microphone. So I hope you guys enjoy these sorts of episodes that I come up with every once in a while. I don't do them very often, but I do like to share some of my experience for a couple of different reasons. One, I like to provide whatever knowledge I have to those who know less than me, or even sometimes those who know more than me, but I have provided a different perspective. Also, it opens up the opportunity that people reach out to me and tell me that I am mistaken about something. So I get to learn something from that as well. So it's a win-win situation for me. And also it's not such a bad thing. I don't enjoy talking to a camera, but I enjoy when something I say helps somebody else. So here we are. And the focus of this episode really is about working with account managers. Now, I am a hybrid sales engineer, so I've been doing both sales and sales engineering for a bit. And every year I get more responsibilities. So I'm taken out of the sales engineering role, pushed more into the sales role. I've talked about it on several podcasts. So I have kind of a unique view of things, and partnering with account managers is an important topic. And the fact that I'm a hybrid also puts me in a position at work where I have sales engineers talk to me about stuff, and then account managers talk to me about stuff, and I understand both areas. Like sometimes the expectations is different from one account manager to the SE, and I'm stuck in the middle. Not that it's a bad thing. I like to help, but it puts me in a unique position where I can actually see things differently. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about working with account managers, and also like Chris White, who was supposed to be on the podcast. He was scheduled to be on the podcast the day my wife decided to go into labor, so we canceled that. He will be back soon, but he's been on a couple of times. And throughout his book, The 6 Habits of Highly Effective Sales Engineers, he has an entire chapter about partnering with our account managers. So it's a very important topic, and we talk about a little bit. I do have a couple of podcasts where I had. I'll put the link to those podcasts in the show notes. But we all talk about, hey, these guys are amazing together. What do they do well? But sometimes we need to recognize when things are not going so great and figure out how we can do better. And throughout my conversations with salespeople within my company, within external companies, and my conversations with SEs within my company and external companies, I am seeing some trends where sometimes salespeople are expecting one thing and SEs are expecting a totally different thing, but they're not talking to each other. So I guess that's number one tip: talk to each other. But I want to talk about what salespeople want, what their expectations are from their SEs, and I'm not going to mention single thing because it's infinite. There's a lot of different things that are needed. It's like a marriage. Different situations would require different dynamics. So I'll talk about the most common ones, or the ones that pop into my mind. Some of them are realistic and some of them are not. And also I'm going to talk about some expectations that SEs would have of salespeople, most of which are realistic, but that's a different story. So the thing about expectations from salespeople to SEs is a lot of it is common sense, but sometimes I don't know, maybe they have a hard time explaining it to the SE, or maybe the SE is just thinks they're doing what the salesperson needs them to do, but they're not, and no one's telling them. So frustration builds. So I think first and foremost, before, like, if you're going to take anything out of this show, and we've said it on multiple shows, is you have to have open lines of communications with your salespeople. And it's not up for them to open the lines of communications or up for you to open the lines of communications. It's whoever wants to take leadership will open the lines of communications, right? They may lead the opportunity, but you may lead the team, even as an SE, especially if you're paired one-to-one. I've had to do that in the past, where I would open up the lines of communication so that the salesperson would actually tell me what he's thinking. My salesperson would tell me what he's thinking. And a lot of times I didn't understand what he wanted, and I wouldn't understand until I asked them the actual question. Like, you're talking about something completely different. What do you actually want from me? And then we'd have a conversation about that. It's not just, oh, I want you to do this. And I'm like, all right. No, we have a conversation. Here's what I think salespeople want. And if you're a salesperson listening to this, feel free to chime in. Tell us exactly what you want so we can tell you if we can do it or we can't. And if you're an SE and you think some of the expectations are foolish or whatever, start the dialogue. I mean, you can get mad at each other. If you don't know each other, it doesn't matter if you hurt your feeling, like each other's feelings, as long as it's respectful and you actually try to understand the other side. But if you work together, try to actually come down to a conclusion. But all right, I'm digressing a little bit too much. So here's what I think salespeople want. Number one, they want the SE to take the technical ownership of the customer. And that's kind of a job description. When we look at jobs, I keep hitting my microphone. We talk about job descriptions for sales engineers, one of which is own technical relationships. But owning technical relationships is a little bit more than just answering the customer's questions. We have to be a little bit more proactive there, where we have to follow up. We have to make sure that the customer understands what we can do for them or what value we bring from a technical perspective. It's not just waiting for an email and then answering that email. So we're like salespeople, they have their Salesforce or whatever CRM they use. And I've seen companies that don't have their SEs use CRMs for anything other than looking up tickets or looking up purchase orders, versus looking at opportunities and trying to figure out, all right, we have these opportunities in the funnel, and some of them will close next month or the month after. What is my impact on these opportunities? What's my impact with these customers? And then go and actually impact the customer, versus sitting there waiting for the salesperson to tell them, like, hey, can you talk to this guy, or can you talk to that guy? Or having the customer email them, it's like, hey, you told me last year about this thing. How does it work? Can you remind me? Can you refresh my memory? So taking ownership is being very proactive. You have to be very proactive in doing that. And that's what salespeople expect, I think, and should expect. Like, when I as a hybrid sales engineer also work with a couple of sales engineers who support my accounts, especially now. Like, they used to be there, but I used to cover all my accounts because I had a small number, so I was able to do both technical and sales. Now they support me a little bit more. So I hope, and we talk about that all the time, I hope that they go out and just talk to the customer and like try to build that relationship with the customer. And keep in mind, my team does both pre-sales and post-sales. So, and our post-sales leads to pre-sales because we don't have that many new logos to sell to. It's the same existing customers that we keep selling over and over. So that's the way it works there. So just be proactive and think beyond just the email. When you look at the CRM and see these are the opportunities, these are the customers we're working at, why, if you're going to send an email, why are you sending that email? Is there a purpose to it other than just saying hi? Or are you trying to move the needle in the positive direction? So there is that. We kind of always need to be strategic with the way we email. I email a ton of people that are just to say hi and build that relationship, especially when I don't have an opportunity with them right away. But when there is an opportunity, I try to push the needle forward. And whether it's through building a relationship or through making sure that they saw the previous email that I sent, or make sure they understood the answers that I provided to their questions. So you own that territory. You're not waiting for anybody to tell you to do anything. In fact, like, you're ahead of the salesperson. If the salesperson asks you what's happening with this, you can say, oh yeah, yesterday I sent this and that, and we're done. Like, this is looking positive. That's one. Two, they hate surprises. So the expectation is that there are no surprises, which is very tough. Surprises happen. They're surprised all the time. Customer used to have budget, the boss changed, no budget, stuff like that. But a big thing is that I noticed, and my relationship changed with my boss quite a bit when I noticed that he has no surprises. So if I'm working on a POC and it's going okay, but then a couple of things go bad, it's not a big deal. But then another couple of things go bad and it's trending downwards. It's not a steep slope to the negative side, but it's going down slowly that you might not notice. It's like the boiling water with the frog. If you boil the water with a frog in it, they won't feel it failing. But if you put a frog in the boiling water, they'll jump out right away. And if you're in a POC, you're the frog. You're not noticing all the different things that are happening. And then the salesperson looks from the outside and sees it drop significantly. So they're a little bit surprised. And the best way to, it's not necessarily anything your fault. Like the POC goes bad for a billion different reasons. I've done POCs where the product that we said is going to do X, Y, and Z failed to do X, Y, and Z. In theory, it should have done that. And that was with my previous company, by the way, not this company. It should have done that, but it didn't. And so it's not my fault. It's my fault that I didn't try it before, but whatever. Things happen. So it went bad. And POCs go bad sometimes for things that are outside your control. What is in your control is to let the salesperson know ahead of time. Maybe he'd be able to escalate it faster, because keep in mind, like, you can escalate everything to the same people that the salesperson can escalate, but you are in it. A lot of times that I'm in it, I'm focused on it, I'm trying to get it to work. I forget to email the people that can help me fix it. So another set of eyes is not a bad thing. And whenever there's a problem, like someone escalates, when someone escalates to your boss or your salesperson for whatever reason, if your salesperson is already aware of the situation because you already explained it to him, the relationship is a lot better than him emailing you or calling you. It's like, what the hell's going on? So keep that in mind. And my relationship changed with my boss quite a bit, because sometimes things happen, and if you're ahead of it and you let people know ahead of it, like, hey, I need help escalating, you are proactive. Whereas things are happening, bad things are happening, and your salesperson or your boss or whoever has to hear about it from your customer, that's bad. And the reason I say my boss is, when I was doing more sales engineering role within my current company, my boss was my sales guy. So that's a different org structure than most. But the point is, my salesperson would find out about it and he'd freak out. So make sure you reduce the element of surprise as much as possible. This is not a birthday. You don't want to surprise them. You want them to anticipate everything and be happy. The third expectation that they have is that you know the product, or at least you know where you can get the answers to the customer's questions. I'm a generalist SE or hybrid SE, whatever you want. Let's call it SE from now on. I'm a generalist SE, which means I have 7 product lines, uh, going from like IP, MPLS, and Ethernet, even like layer 1 packet stuff, all the way to LTE. And we also have IT security type solutions as well. So I'm not going to know everything. There's no way I know everything. We have dedicated SEs that are experts in each product line. I am not one of them. I'm a generalist SE, but because my customers are more focused on layer 2, layer 3, that's where my area of expertise is. But I still have to sell something like to solve LTE problems, for example. I'm not going to know all the LTE problems that we solve. So I'd have to ask questions, or I'd have to be able to get the right person to ask the questions. So, or at least I'd have to have a basic idea of what we can solve so I can have a chat about it. So the salesperson is expecting me to know what my customer knows or needs, also be able to get them information as fast as possible. And that leads me kind of to the fourth expectation from the salesperson. They don't want to have to follow up with you. So if a customer asks you a question and you say you're going to answer them by tomorrow or the day after or the day after, whatever it is, whatever date you provide, if you tell them that's when you're gonna provide them the answer, you don't want your salesperson to follow up with you to provide the answer. And this happens quite a bit, where you said you're going to find the answer, and then you came back and you kind of wrote up your notes and you sent an email to product management to get the answer, and then they might have sent the email, forwarded the email to an engineer to provide you the answer, and that's like 3 days worth of emails going back and forth. But the customer doesn't know that. The customer's perspective is radio silence. And if the salesperson isn't on the email thread, or they might not even read the email thread because it's too technical, they will not know it. All they know is from the customer's perspective, we are dropping the ball. So if you say you're going to do something, do it. Don't let the salesperson follow up with you. Be proactive, beat them to the punch. You can either email the salesperson and say, hey, salesperson, I'm not getting the answers that I want yet. I'm still working on it. I haven't forgot about it. Or you can email that to the customer. And I've done that several times. Like, hey, it's taking a little bit longer because it's a little bit more complicated than I expected. Just bear with me and I'll get you the answer soon. But the big thing is also don't forget to follow up with the people you're trying to get answers from, especially if you have a deal on the line. The faster you answer the questions, the shorter the sales cycle is. And the more proactive you appear, the more customer centric you appear. So it has a lot of benefits to actually provide the answers as fast as possible. And I know I'm probably preaching to the choir. I hit the mic again. I'm preaching to the choir, but it has to be said, because that's something I like to do. I'd rather say something and look stupid than not say something and then look really stupid. You know, I look stupid for actually stating the obvious versus I look stupid than for dropping the ball. So keep that. That's what I like to think about it. And the fifth expectation I would say is not wait to be asked to do something. We get a lot of emails in the day. I get a lot of emails that are like, "Hey folks, hey guys," especially from customers, where they're not talking to a specific person. They're talking to the company. They're talking to my company. Or it could be targeted towards the one person, but it might be the wrong person. For example, they might be asking my account manager technical questions. My job is to actually take a look and see before my salesperson reaches out to me and say, "Hey Ramsey, can you answer that question?" I want to answer it before, like, I just want to, basically the whole point of all of this, everything I'm trying to say can be, I guess I should wait till I say the last point, but everything that I'm trying to say is trying to reduce work off your salesperson's back. Everything that I'm saying, you're going to end up doing anyways. you are going to have to email the customer, tell them, hey, sorry, I'm late for sending the response, or letting the account manager know that things are going badly in a POC, or knowing learning more about your product. All this is going to happen anyways. The one thing you're doing is not letting your salesperson stress out and having to email you about it so you can actually do it. You're just doing it without being told, which shows you're proactive, you know what you're doing, and they trust you. They can put their hands in warm water, which I don't know why people do that. You, I don't know. I feel like you need to pee. Personally, is that even an expression? Never mind. I'm digressing. But all of that is just to reduce the work off of your account manager, and basically you're allowing them to trust you more, and they'll get off your back. And a lot of relationships tend to get better when that is done. And the last thing I wanted to say is be efficient. Right? When you know your product very well, you can be efficient with your time, and you don't need 5 days to build a demo. Or if you do need 5 days the first time to build a demo, hopefully the next time you'll need 3 days, because most of the demos is built. You just need to change a couple things here and there. So be efficient so you can speed up the sales cycle. So if the customer hit it while it's hot, well, and do the demo as soon as possible so you can speed up the sales cycle. Whether it actually speeds up the sales cycle or just the customer is asking for demos because he or she has nothing better to do, that's a different story. So, but it's good to be efficient. All right, and now here are some unrealistic expectations that salespeople have, and it is your job as the SE, and I mean you, yes, you, to change that expectation. Number one, demo without asking questions. We talked about it in last week's episode with Matt Elsom from Emma 3D, where he, as a salesperson, would go to a pseudo SE, if you will, not an actual SE, but an engineer who knows how to talk to customers, and just tell them to demo. And also, that's the genesis of the book, Just Effing Demo by Rob Falcone, where people just tell them, go effing demo, show them as much stuff as you can. So that is an unrealistic expectation. I want to ask questions, and I have complex products. It's not a simple GUI where you just click on a couple of things. No, we're talking about networking. There is GUIs involved, but we're talking about networking. And even if it's a simple GUI, you still want to know how to tell the story. Which story would resonate more with the customer? So if they're asking you to do a demo within a half day's notice, and in some companies that's okay, but in most companies that I've seen, it's not. You have to be able to ask questions, whether it's to the customers themselves, which is what I do. I never listen to my salespeople anymore because they've always given me wrong information. Or you can ask the salespeople if it's a less complex product. But you have to set the expectation. This is unrealistic that you'd want me to demo without knowing what the problem is, without knowing who the customer is. Who am I talking to? Because if I'm talking to a C-level executive, it's different than talking to a user. I need to know all this information before I actually do the demo. And you don't have to wait till you have a demo to set the expectations. When you start talking to a salesperson, whether you're covering 1 or 10, it's the same thing. Whenever you meet with them, set the expectation that you want more time than just 5 minutes to prepare for a demo. And even if you want 5 minutes to prepare for a demo, you want 10 minutes to understand who you're demoing for. So that is an unrealistic expectation, which I hate. And as my son says, he's 5 years old, he likes the word detest. I detest that. So I detest that. Also another common expectation, unrealistic one, is to be available to them at a moment's notice without dropping everything else. And if you're covering multiple salespeople, it'll be very. If that's the expectation, the next time that somebody else has a need for you, you can drop everything you're doing for the first person who actually had that expectation of you. But that's not actually what's going to happen. You're going to have to talk to them anyways. But if you're covering also one-to-one, even one-to-one, if the salesperson is asking you to do one thing let me rephrase that. If the salespeople person is asking you to do something, that means he's asking you not to do something else, because you can only do one thing at a time. Multitasking is a myth. You can't do two things at once. You can task switch, but you cannot multitask. Keep that in mind. So you can't, like, you're not a processor. You're not a multi-threaded processor where you're running multiple processes at the same time. Even if you're talking on the phone and walking, you're doing two things at once, but one of them doesn't require thinking. As soon as the conversation gets intense, you'll notice that you stopped walking. So you can't do something without dropping something else. And the expectation that you're going to do that is incorrect. And again, you're going to have to figure out a way to set that expectation. That brings me to number 3 here, is everything is a priority. I had this beautiful thing where my sales guy kept asking me to do stuff and more stuff and more stuff. But he didn't provide guidance towards what is the most important thing, what's the least important thing. So what I did was I wrote down single thing that I had to do. I have this POC that I'm doing. I have this demo that I'm doing. I have this discovery that I'm preparing for. I just wrote down everything on a whiteboard. He should have seen everything through Salesforce anyways, because I use Salesforce as an SE, but he didn't. So I wrote everything down and I brought him over to my desk and like, hey dude, this is what I'm working on. This is going to require 5 hours of work. This is going to require X amount, whatever. What is the priority so I can focus on? What is the second what's the second important thing? He looks at me and says, they're all a priority. And in my mind, if you've read the book, The One Thing, the author in there, Gary Keller and Jay Papasan, the authors, they mentioned that the word priority is singular, not plural. It's not priorities. You have a priority. There's one priority. You may have others that are important, but we have one most important thing that you're going to focus on, and you're not going to move on to the next one until you finish that one. It could be just as simple as sending an email and moving on with your life, but the point is you're going to have priorities, P1, P2, P3, whatever it is, and that you only work on P1 until you won't touch P2 or P3 until P1 is done. So we kind of had to work through that as well. That wasn't very realistically. I can't work on all of them at the same time. So we either drop something, I get some help, or we schedule stuff and prioritize. And that's what we ended up doing. We prioritized. And you know what? At that point, I just didn't ask him anymore. I just did my own prioritization based on what I know and based on my conversation with him about what's important. I didn't ask him for the priorities anymore. I just had conversations and figured out what he thought was important and moved on. Another unrealistic expectation is that they expect us to know everything about everything. Even if you have one single product that you cover, you will not know everything about everything. And that expectation kills me. Mainly because they think that they can schedule a demo for us on like half hour's notice and we can actually do it. It's possible we could, but my business, more often than not, we need days to prepare. So the expectation for us to know everything, especially as a generalist sales engineer, that's tough. Excuse me. Even the specialist SEs within specific areas, they don't know everything about everything. So, but we can get the answers to everything. Maybe it's not the answers that they like, but you know. And the fifth expectation, I don't know, I maybe wrote it tongue in cheek a little bit, but it's they expect us to read their mind. We don't get guidance. Like what I was talking about when I asked about the priority. Great salespeople give their SEs guidance, especially if they're paired one-to-one. They tell them what they're focused on, what they want, and what they need. They're always talking. I mean, dude, I don't even read my wife's mind, so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to read your mind, knowing that I don't talk to you as much as I talk to my wife. I've only known you for a year or two, so that's not going to happen. So you better be able to talk to me, and I better be able to talk to you. I guess the common denominator for everything that I just talked about is being able to have conversations with your colleagues so you can get better. It's hard to get better as a team if you can't talk to each other as a team, critique each other as a team. And that's the only way you can get better. But okay, and here are some expectations that SEs have from their salespeople. So if you're a salesperson listening to this, this section is for you. So number one, we expect some guidance every once in a while. Like I am all about proactivity. I am all about taking ownership. I'm all about taking initiative. But if you give me guidance about what to take initiatives on, that'll make my life easier. And if it's important for us to POC this brand new beta product that is not even out yet because it's beta, obviously, then I will know how to prioritize my day to actually get the customers to do the beta with you versus letting you try to figure it out on your own, and then then I have to come in later and try to figure it out as well. But some guidance is always helpful. Another thing is not having to follow up a million times with salespeople. So here, like we talked about, I don't want the salesperson to follow up with me. I don't want to have to follow up with the salesperson a million times. And that's happened in the past where I talked to a customer, the customer is interested in this product, and they asked for a quote. It looked like a sure thing. I did the BANT. They're interested. They're going to take it up with their management, whatever. I go to the salesperson, hey man, this guy is interested in this product. We did this, and that. Can you send him a quote? Sure, I'll send him a quote. 2 days later, crickets. Like, dude, where's the quote? Yeah. I'll send the quote. 2 days later, crickets. Come on, man. I don't want to have to follow up with you because it makes me look bad. I promised that guy that you will send him a quote, but you haven't. So I don't want to have to do this again. So the same way you don't want the salesperson to follow up with, I don't want the salesperson to follow up with me. I don't want to have to follow up with you. And if you don't want to send a quote for a specific reason or not, tell me so I don't have to follow up with you again because I have better things to do. I don't want to have to follow up. So if I say follow up one more time, I'll just leave it there. I do expect some heads up about a demo. Ideally, personally, I do expect to be part of the discovery process during a demo. I most likely will refuse to do a demo without discovery because I've been burned so many times. I've told the story on Chris White's LinkedIn live sessions that he does. Doctors Check-in, I think. Check them out if you haven't. They're pretty cool. I told the story where I came in to do a demo where our product is running on a third-party system. They want to see the intricacy of the operation between the two, except my sales guy gave me the wrong information about the third-party system. They told me it's ESXi, but when I showed up to the customer side, they told me it's KVM. It's two totally different things. Some of you may know what that means. Bottom line is, I had nothing prepared for that, and I kind of had to squirm my way around and tell them, oh, it doesn't matter what we were running on as long as we were running, and it will run exactly the same way. So I was able to save myself, but it did not feel great. Like I was sweating. I was really sweating when they were talking about it, and I asked the sales guy to stall as I'm trying to come up with a story. And that happened a couple of different times as well, where a salesperson scheduled a demo for me where it's an interop demo where I'm interoping with my customer's equipment. And I told him, no, I'm going to go meet with the customer before I actually do the demo. And I called my contact there. He agreed to meet with me, and I showed up. Their system didn't work. Now, we were able to figure out his system didn't work because I showed up. It was private. We were able to look at it together and figure it out. But if I had showed up and we had 20 people in the room, they wouldn't even know whose fault it was. They might think it's mine. They might think it's his or the system. Doesn't really matter. I just wasted a day. I invested half hour a day, what was it? Like an hour the day before and had a successful demo the day after versus investing just that demo hour and having it fail, and then having to come next week or whatever, or even if I get the chance to come back at all. So I expect some heads up about the demo. And my fourth expectation of a salesperson is not to have to constantly correct them in front of the customer or in general. And you should know your product. You shouldn't be overselling or selling the wrong product. And like I have like my boss today, the salesperson, he was an SE for the same company, so he knows the product very well. I am so not worried when I'm with him. In the previous company, the guy would say something wrong, I would correct him, and he would double down by saying that he talked to the PMs. That meant to me that he's just trying to sell, whether it's right or wrong, and he'll figure out the commercials after. Not commercials, the commercial, like the finances after. Like, oh, we promised him that we can do this and this and that on one box, but we can't. We need 3 boxes. We'll just give him 3 boxes. Because that's the only consideration they have. They don't think about the lab space or power. So I don't want to have to correct the salesperson constantly. I don't want to be the bad guy in front of, like, oh, I guess I'll be the hero in front of the customer, except if the salesperson doubles down and then I double down, and that's a whole conversation that could happen, or a whole fight that could break out in front of the customer. I don't want to have to do that. My expectation is that the customer knows the product, or knows at least what he should know about the product, as much as I should know what I should know about the product. And we can work together to sell. And the last thing, and I don't know if that's happened to anybody else, but I don't want to repeat myself a million times. So number 4 was I don't want to correct myself a million times. This one, I don't want to repeat myself a million times to the salesperson. And what that means is basically just, if I tell my salesperson something, I expect him to remember it the next time we talk. If I explain to the salesperson, we did this proof of concept, this is what happened, this is the results, and this is my expectation today, I don't want to have to get on a call the next day and repeat the same things to the same salesperson. I expect him to take that information and push it up the chain or do whatever he wants with it. I want him to remember that. And if he can't, he should take notes. My salesperson took copious amounts of notes to the point where he lost his notes and he didn't know where he put them. So he'd always forget and come back and ask me. When I tell you something, I don't want to have to repeat it. I have a million things to do the same way you have a million things to do. So I expect you to understand that. So remember that. And that's pretty much everything that I have for today. I did come up with an anagram that I want to run by you about like how we could work with salespeople. And by the way, like if salespeople and SEs do this properly together, the teams will be unstoppable. If you can work together with a salesperson and be on the same, like each one of you does their job to the maximum, like you're Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan, you're just at the top of your game all the time, you will be unstoppable. Doesn't matter what you're selling, doesn't matter who you're selling to. It's just, if you can get there, you'll be a well-oiled machine. But here's the acronym or the anagram. I don't know what it's called, but I basically came up with KDOF or DOFI. The K is silent. And the point about it is you're knowledgeable, know your stuff, decisive. That means you make decisions. And that's something that I kind of bugs me when I'm working with specialist SEs, where I'm asking them the question and they just won't give me a straight answer. It's either this or that or this or that. Just give me a straight answer. I don't care if even if it's not the answer I want to hear. I just want to know what I need to do. You don't need to kind of give me the runaround so that I need to make a decision. So KDO is own your stuff. Be proactive. Go after opportunities. Don't let anything fall through the cracks. You own the opportunity as much as the salesperson, and you're also getting paid for it, hopefully. Not as much as the salesperson, but you're getting paid for it. F is for follow through. So if you committed to something, follow through that. If they ask you a question, follow through getting them an answer. Just follow through in general. And E is expectations. Set the expectations, clarify expectations. You're setting expectations with your salesperson. You also need to clarify what expectations they have of you. So there's that. Kdofi. I'm working on it. I don't know why I can't. I just wanted to have fun. I don't know if I have too much time on my hand or not enough time, and maybe a little bit too much alcohol. So, anyways, I think that's been a longer episode than I expected, because I thought solo episodes would be shorter. So I'm gonna just cut it short here. And thank you again for listening to me rant for, I don't know how long it's been, but thank you anyways. And I will see you next week. With that, this is Ramsey signing off.